Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And first thing I'd like to do is read a meeting statement. This is a live council meeting and it is being recorded. Your personal information, including your voice, your image, your name, opinions, any other personal information disclosed by you during the meeting is collected by the City of Rossland under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act for the purpose of your participation in this meeting and public input. If you have any questions about the collection of your personal information, please contact dco@rossland.ca. If you do not wish your personal information to be collected, please do not join the live council meeting. In order to run the meeting smoothly, if you wish to comment on an agenda item, please raise your hand on your computer screen, and I'll call on those who wish to speak by name. So I can see we have a number of people here. Some are part of the delegations and some perhaps just wish to speak to us. So please let us know what you'd like to do. Okay, so first off, we're going to have public input. So is there anyone of our attendees who would like to speak for public input? If you are here for a delegation, we'll get to you in a moment, but if you're not here for delegation, please feel free to speak. Okay, and that will be Sam Ross, and we will get you set up here.
Okay.
All right. Hello, Sam. Welcome.
Hi, Sam Ross, 2792 Railway Street. Just a bit about the upcoming item on the tennis courts. I've got something I prepared to read, should be quick. So on March the 15th, the Rossland Tennis Society received a proposed facility use agreement from the City of Rossland with instructions to return any comments or concerns by March the 24th. The presented agreement was significantly different from the lease and service agreements that have been signed many times over the previous decades. The Society reviewed and revised the presented document with the intention of preserving the spirit of past agreements while retaining, as much as possible, the language desired by the City. The Society returned a modified document on March 21st, and there has been no discussion regarding it since then. I'd like to address the Society's intentions regarding the modifications presented. The first point in the previous agreements under the Society's duties and responsibilities sections, this is the previous documents, reads, the Society shall maintain and operate the courts for general use by the public. The spirit of this clause is reflected that the voluntary membership in the Society confers no privilege at the courts. The Society believes that the new agreement leans towards this exclusivity for the Society, which is something that the Society does not want. The Society is primarily interested in keeping the courts in good operating order for use by the general public. The Society also requested that the notice of termination in the agreement be dropped to 30 days, along with the removal of a number of performance clauses. These changes were intended to allow the City to cancel the agreement should it find any fault with any aspect of the Society's performance in the courts, rather than limit the performance measurement to a set of specific circumstances. Of course, prior to cancellation, the Society would prefer to work with the City to rectify those shortcomings. However, the City would retain the right to terminate if not satisfied with any circumstance. The Society has also requested that the term of the grant and aid agreement be reduced from 1 year to 3 years, from 1 year from 3 years as originally requested. Upon reflection, the Society realized that given the reconstruction effort, the new insurance requirements, and the uncertainty around the agreement, the financial position of the Society would be uncertain for at least 2 to 3 years. For example, the Society's resurfacing reserve is significantly higher than it's ever been in the past due to the disruption of the regular cycle of maintenance by the issues with the site infrastructure. Given this uncertainty, it did not seem prudent to lock the Society and the City into an agreement that might interfere with the more important task of keeping the courts operating. It is an oversimplification to view this as a request of the Society looking for an increased funds to cover insurance costs going forward. The Society and the City have enjoyed many decades of successful cooperation to provide the citizens of Rossland with one of the best tennis facilities in the Kootenays. The Society looks forward to continuing this relationship. Thanks, and if you've got questions or anything comes up, go ahead and ask. Thank you.
Okay. That's great, Sam. Thank you. It's not the City's intention to make this an exclusive facility at all, just the opposite. We really appreciate the fact that it is public and that, you know, your organization has been, you know, playing a key role to keep it maintained and keep it running and all of that. It's a real benefit to the city and the citizens of Roslyn. So there is nothing there that is changing at all. I think the 1 year to 3 year makes perfect sense for a number of reasons. We offer 3 years to our groups because a lot of them like the stability of knowing that they'll have set funding for a 3-year period. So it's more, that was put in there more as a benefit to the groups and as a benefit to the city. But we understand there's things going on now that, you know, might work well to just have, you know, 1 year now, and, you know, maybe next time around you'll want a 3-year agreement. It's like we can work with that. The other thing, a number of the clauses that are in that agreement are really just standard clauses that we use with all of our groups that operate services and facilities for us, like the museum and, you know, and the library and that kind of thing. So some of those are, I mean, I don't want to say they're boilerplate, but they are kind of boilerplate. You know, we're trying to standardize all of our agreements as much as possible, but we understand that there are differences between the two. So I'll say that, and I want to see if anybody in council has any other questions, and we will discuss this. I can actually, do you want to stay and listen to the discussion, Sam? Because I can move it up in the agenda.
Doesn't matter. I'll stay as long as it takes. No big, nothing really going on.
Well, okay. You may regret that, but I'll leave it where it is. But I would move it if you wanted. Okay, council, does anybody have questions or comments they'd like to make at this point? For any questions for Sam? Okay, I don't see any. So thank you, Sam, for coming, and we will discuss your item tonight. Is there anyone else for public input? Our delegations are, you know, for the RDKB and for Tourism Roslyn. So if you want to speak about the, development permit up at Iron Colt, you should raise your hand now because we'll be discussing it later. But if you don't want to comment, that's fine too. We have the full report. Okay, I see Laura's hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
I was going to say it would be nice if you did move that up the agenda.
Okay.
And I may stay for the whole meeting, but let's just do it while we're talking about it.
Sure. Sure, that's fine. We can do that. Okay, now I just have to get back to my spot there. That is 8B. Okay. Okay, great. Anyone else for public input? No? Okay. Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. We're going to move 8A and 8B forward. We'll put 8B first because tennis was here and speaking. So 8B and then 8A, and we'll put those right after our adoption of the minutes of the community whole. So that would go to 6, basically right before referrals from prior meetings. Okay, Cynthia, I'm assuming you've got that. So I take a motion. Terry makes it, Andy seconds it, all in favor. Okay, that carries. Okay, so first up, we have an RDKB delegation, and we welcome Mark, and I see we've got Diane in there too. So I'm not sure which or both of you are speaking, but you guys are up. And thank you for coming.
Well, I'll be speaking, but I'll give Diane an opportunity to say a word or two if she would like.
Sure. Thanks for having us. It's a little odd being on the flip side of the table. So thanks for having us. And hi, Andy. Nice to see you. All right. And take it away, Mark.
Well, I will. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I've got the slide deck, so if it's okay, I'll just share the screen now. All good? Okay.
Great. Thank you.
And working our way through. For those of you that aren't as familiar with the Regional District of Kootenay Boundary and its boundaries, I just wanted to orient everyone as to where we are and the communities that we do represent and provide services to. So the Regional District of Kootenay Boundary has 8 member municipalities and 5 electoral areas. So 13 directors sit around the table. The easternmost boundary is Park Siding, so between Fruitvale and Salmo. And then on the west, as you start heading down the hill towards Osoyoos past Anarchist Summit, I think it's 9 kilometers past Anarchist Summit is our westerly boundary on Highway 3, and then up Highway 33, including Big White Ski Resort. So right at the turnoff to Big White Ski Resort is our boundary there. 31,447 residents as of 2016, 8,200 square kilometers, and 18,321 homes as of the 2016 census. The regional district provides 71 services across the regional district. The city of Rosslyn participates in 14 of those. So when I say the city of Rosslyn participates in 14, that means that those are 14 services that the city is taxed for and has a vote on and participates in discussions and the direction of those individual services. For regional districts, each of our services, there's a statutory requirement that they operate as independent, discrete services. We can't transfer monies back and forth between either one. They have to operate as though they were our only service. So we have some fairly strict limitations there in terms of how we manage each of those 71 services. This represents a comparison of our annual property tax and annual budget going back over the last 10 years. As you can see from the blue bars, our budgets have increased significantly this year, up to 55 million. So the biggest budget we've ever had. And as shown by the green bars, the annual property tax has increased at a much more modest level from 17 million in 2011 to 23 million in 2021, as compared to 32 million in as a budget in 2011, up to 55 million this year. And as has been experienced with the city of Rosslyn, we've been counting on a lot of other sources of revenue over the last few years, particularly grants. And in the next year or so, we anticipate that blue bar is going to be going up considerably. We have some fairly optimistic views of some grant monies that are coming our way for a couple of major projects that the regional district is undertaking. So just to give you a sense of our sources of revenue, municipality tax levy represents 19.68% of our revenue, and then the electoral area tax revenue is 23.5%. And then we have a number of other revenue sources. Grants fall in under other revenue and other governments, so that's 16.58 and 6.12, depending on the nature of the grant. Reserve funds, sale of services, that's user fees, tipping fees at the landfill sites, user fees to use the aquatic center at Grand Forks, and those sorts of fees. And then a number of other sources of revenue there. And if anyone has any questions as I go through this, I'll go through these pie chart slides fairly quickly. I'm just trying to give you a sense of a snapshot of what our budget revenues and expenditures look like as categorized.
Mark, I do have a question on the board fee one that you say that 1.6. If that doesn't come from the member municipality and electoral area tax levy, where does it come from?
Was that the board fee? Sorry, was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the board fee is recovery from other services. So the general admin service, our 001, provides overhead administration to a number of services. And what we try to do is recover those costs from the individual services to an extent. We've got a project that we began in 2020, carried through to the beginning of 2021, cost allocation policy, where we're trying to allocate more of the costs provided to those services, overhead services, through general admin. And that is in compliance with the legislation that each service should be operating independently. So those overhead services that are provided to each service, whether it's a fire service in Grand Forks or a security service in Big White, should be paying its share. So the taxpayers within that service area should be compensating the general admin service for those overhead services provided to it.
Thank you.
Okay. So we anticipate the 1.26 there that's covered by the board fee isn't covering all of the costs, the overhead costs to those services currently. We know that, and that's been the case for years. So what we have been looking at doing is having a more complete and accurate cost recovery of those overhead costs to the various services. And that's going to be an ongoing board discussion over a number of months this year. So we anticipate that board fee number will likely increase next year, depending on the way the board discussions go.
Thanks.
Okay, probably too much information there. Any other questions? All right, I'll move on. Just categorizing our expenses. So just give you a sense of this is across the region. So this takes in all of the services across the region. So environmental health services includes water, sewer, waste management, recycling, organics, diversion, those sorts of services. Development services, planning and building inspection, recreation and cultural services, fairly self-explanatory, the aquatic center, arenas, parks and recreation, fiscal services at 4%, general government services 11%, protective services are various fire departments across the region, as well as emergency management and 911 communications. And then transportation services are the two transit services that we operate, the East End Transit and Boundary Transit services. And then a further breakdown of the expenditures by type, salaries and benefits at 24.3%, expenditures capitalized 24.5%, and then a range of other services. And I think you've all had an opportunity to see this as part of your agenda package. So I won't go through each of those mini slices of the pie. It might get a bit daunting. And then finally, just a breakdown of the services that are provided to the city of Rossland, the 14 services of our 71 services that the city of Rossland participates in. Kootenay Boundary Regional Fire Rescue representing the greatest share, 38% of the tax requisition to the city of Rossland, followed by East End Sewer at 17%, East End Transit, the transit service at 12%, and then Culture, Arts and Recreation for the Lower Columbia at 8%, and Regional Waste Management at 8%, and then smaller percentages as we go through the rest of the services provided. So any questions on this breakdown? Here's where we get to the really interesting stuff, the comparison of budgets and requisitions from 2020 to the 2021 budget, which was just adopted, the budget and 5-year financial plan at the board's last meeting on March 31st. So on the very left column are the 14 services that the city of Rossland participates in. Columns 1, 2, and 3 represent 2020, the annual service budget for each of the services. Column 2, the requisition for each of the services across all service participants. And then the tax requisition for Rossland in column 3, separated out. Similarly, in columns 4, 5, and 6, we have the numbers for 2021, the annual service budget for each of those 14 services in column 4, column 5, the tax requisition, the overall tax requisition to all participants for each of those services. And then finally in column 6, the tax requisition for 2021 for the city of Rossland. And then changes are in the final 2 columns to the right, changes to the service budget in 4-1, and then in 6-3, the changes to the requisition to the city of Rossland. So you can see down
Chris
that.
has a question before we go too far.
Yeah.
I want to see if Chris's
Okay, yeah,
question is appropriate now. Chris?
absolutely.
Thanks. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, I just want to, as we move into April and some changes are happening commercially for recycling through our partners here. Is there any appetite or discussion around getting some money in the budget to help with some of the commercial recycling initiatives around? Or is it?
Yeah, there's a bit of history there. We're actually going the opposite way, just phasing out. There has been a commercial cardboard recycling program for the city of Rossland and the Beaver Valley, and those are the only areas in the regional district where the regional district has provided a service through a contract to help commercial businesses out with that recycling initiative. Last year, I think it was about a year ago or a year and a half ago, the board initiated a discussion on that and trying to, in an effort to have more consistent service levels across the region, there was a decision to phase out that commercial recycling program to the city and to the Beaver Valley. So as of, I believe it's April of this year, so this month, that will be phased out. And our staff over the last year have been notifying commercial businesses and providing some education in terms of what can be done with the cardboard. And across the region, most businesses either transport their cardboard to the landfill, to the recycling depots at the landfills themselves, or have a contract with a contractor to do that work. And so it's going to be a matter of that being replicated in Rossland and the Beaver Valley, as is currently occurring in all the other communities across the region.
Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. So yeah, the numbers are self-explanatory there now that I've gone through that. The assessment base in the bottom, the third from the bottom row, you can see the assessment base is increased in Rossland 8% over the course of the year. That's a combination of new construction, new builds, renovations, additions to properties, as well as property value increases, as everyone's experienced. And that has been a trend across the region. 8%, I think, is fairly typical. Area B that surrounds the city of Rossland, their assessment base has increased 12%. The highest, I think, is the West Boundary, which is perhaps a surprise, but everything from sort of Greenwood West and up through Rock Creek and Beaverdale has increased. The assessment base there has increased 16%. And then on the lower row, you can see the cost per $100,000 property as a comparison between 2020 and 2021. Per $100,000 of property value is under the current budget decreasing 1.39%, but most people's property values have increased. So the general property owner can expect an increase in regional district taxation, but for that rare individual whose property value has remained stable between 2020 and 2021, they can see a 1.39% decrease in their regional district taxation. So I'm happy to entertain any questions on this. And if there aren't any questions on this, I'll just move into some of the initiatives that we're pursuing currently. Okay. First, one of our big projects across the region is our organics diversion project. And we've got a few, I think 4 different elements to this initiative. The first one is our partnership with the Regional District of Central Kootenay. They're developing an organics infrastructure facility in Salmo, and we've got an agreement with them whereby we are committing to supply them with organic food waste starting at the end of 2022. So through that partnership, and they've received quite a bit of grant funding to develop that facility, we have made that commitment. And as part of that commitment, we will need to make some improvements to McKelvey Creek landfill to provide a transfer station for organics material there. So we've got a grant application in for that project that's got a value of about $2 million to make the improvements to the McKelvey Creek landfill site to allow us to manage organics material there, which includes a second weigh scale. And for those of you who've visited the landfill, it's a fairly congested area, and to allow us to manage organics products there, we're going to have to make some changes. The other components are we've got a grant application in as well under the Clean BC Organic Infrastructure Program for our residential curbside green bin collection program. So that's to allow us to purchase green bins for all of the residents in the Lower Columbia region. So the 5 municipalities and 2 electoral areas, as well as engage in an educational program. So that's a project value just over $1 million. And then the fourth element of the project is improvements to our organics processing at the Grand Forks landfill site. So for a number of years, we've provided curbside organics collection throughout the boundary, which is really, really unusual in BC. We're the only regional district that's doing it on a widespread rural basis. So everywhere from Carmi, Beaverdale through Sidley Mountain and into Grand Forks and Christina Lake receives regular curbside collection for green bins, kitchen scraps and that type of material. We're making some improvements at the Grand Forks landfill site to increase our capacity there to also accept commercial, industrial, and institutional organics, as well as improve the quality of the finished material. So it's commercial grade quality that we could eventually sell the compost coming out of that facility. Currently, it's at a quality that we can only use for cover material at the landfill site, so it's pretty limited. So the table here is just showing the grant applications and project costs that we have been involved in. The first one we have received already, and the other 2 we're optimistic about. So we've received the $2.3 million for the Grand Forks landfill site improvements. And then the curbside green bin rollout is anticipated to occur in the fall of next year, 2022, in this area. So that's going to be a big initiative for us and something that we're getting a lot of positive feedback about. It only relates to kitchen waste, not yard waste or that sort of thing. And we're currently working with Councillor Morell is the chair of the curbside collection working group to figure out how we're going to roll that out. We've done a survey to the local municipalities just to see how they would like to do it, whether it's a contract or they would like their own staff to do it if they're doing the collection with their staff. So I suspect it'll be some form of hybrid where there'll be contracted service and some contracts potentially with the regional district. Some may maintain contracts as a municipal collection system. And then there's one municipality where their staff are doing the collection. And I see Councillor Nightingale has her hand up.
Yep, Janice, you're up.
Thank you, Mark. I was just wondering, the new facility in Selmo, will you build it to spec the way that you're upgrading the Grand Forks one, so that we will be able to create some commercially available and usable resources from it?
Yeah, that is my understanding. It's an RDCK project, and we're just contracting with them to supply them with material. So I'm less involved with the technical details of that one, but that's my understanding, that it will have a product that is saleable.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Terry, question?
Thanks. Hey, Mark.
Terry.
I'd love to get a little background color. First of all, this is wonderful. I think reducing the impact and lifespan of McIlvey and putting that organic waste to good use is tremendous. Why? I think about the trucking costs of moving this stuff around, and you've got experience out in the boundary, but where's the I imagine it's a case of efficiencies, like why we wouldn't go sort of municipality. But can you explain the rationale behind having such a central?
Yeah. A couple of issues. Space, we just don't have the space available at the McKelvey Creek landfill site to do it. So we would have had to site a separate facility, which is a horrible task because there are a number of regulatory criteria that we would have to meet, as well as engaging with the community to find a site that was acceptable to a community. So really fortunate that RDCK was able to find a site, even with the trucking costs and emissions associated with trucking. The GHG reduction benefits from organics diversion are huge. And I've on a slide here, and I'll be showing you, we've reduced our GHG emissions since 2008 by 44%. And a lot of that has to do with the Boundary Organics Diversion Project. So with the East End Diversion Project, the GHG emissions reduction are going to be really, really significant, even with the additional trucking costs.
Thanks, Mark.
And Mark, if you don't mind me hopping in, there are a few conversations too that are still happening around that on, like, for example, collecting Rossland and then coming down to Warfield and then going to the trail location, or having a hub at Beaver Valley for like Montrose and Fruitvale, so that we're not trucking back in and then going back out. So there are a lot of conversations on how we can do this efficiently and make sure we keep that top of mind.
Janice, do you have another question?
Something else I wouldn't mind adding to too, for folks that are looking for information. Mark had mentioned about the idea that this is, at this point, kitchen waste only, residential kitchen waste. But there is a hope and a plan forward to expand that to potentially include yard and garden waste in the future. So knowing that this project is kind of in its infancy, the intent is to continue to build on the potential of diverting more and more waste, carbon waste from the landfill and using it in the composting program in Selmo. So, and again, as Janice had asked about the commercial value of it, the intent is to make it available back to the residential market, and hopefully we have a product that is green and you know, to a standard that we can use it in our own organic gardens. That's the hope and the plan.
Carry on, Mark.
All right, I'll move on to another one of our initiatives, and this is multi-pronged. It's been ongoing, but we've had a few pretty exciting developments in the last little while. Particularly, just make note of the February 1st announcement, which was exciting for the Regional District of Kootenay Boundary, because there was an announcement that the government of BC made around their EV fleet strategy, the Go Electric Fleets program, wherein they invited our chair, Chair Langman, to make the announcement with George Heyman, Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, and Bruce Ralston, Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation, because we are one of, if not the only, rural regional district that has embraced EV fleet technology. So it was a real feather in the regional district cap, and a feather in the cap of our board of directors to have that foresight to undertake our EV strategy, and we're getting well into it. So I'll just focus on a couple of those issues. So we were fortunate a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, to get access to a new employee for a 2-year term, fully funded by Fortis. Freya Phillips, who is a Rossland resident, is our senior energy specialist and has been providing great service to the regional district in helping to both reduce our energy footprint and our GHG footprint. And one of those projects that we've been involved in is our EV pilot program, and we've started the pilot program in 2019 with the purchase of our first EV, purchased 2 more in 2020, started installing some EV infrastructure, charging stations here at the office, and are in the process of installing more at our Grand Forks office so we can continue the conversion. 1 more is planned for purchase as we replace our fleet vehicles. We're incrementally replacing them with electric vehicles. We've also been looking at upgrading our heating systems. We just upgraded the heating system in the Fruitvale Fire Hall with 2 new high energy efficiency furnaces and got a significant rebate from that work. And then also working on facility assessments for our various facilities. As part of the agreement we've got with Fortis, we had to enter into a contract with a set list of deliverables. We're providing energy assessments of 10 of our facilities. So we're looking at our major producers of GHGs and least energy efficient facilities, our recreation facilities, fire halls, and offices. And then we've got a number of reduction programs around organics. And then our new homes program with the implementation of the STEP code on the regional basis, January 1st of this year on a voluntary compliance basis. And we provided a few options to the board in terms of what approach they wanted to take with the implementation of the STEP code. Considering that it will be mandated, incrementally mandated as part of the building code in 2022. So we are getting our builders in the region ready with training and educational sessions and providing an opportunity for voluntary compliance and also providing them with educational materials around how they can pursue the rebates through the various programs that are available to them. And Freya has been doing a great job at identifying the various programs that are available to local governments, contractors, homeowners, and business owners. And then working, continuing the work of the Accelerate Kootenays project in supporting further charging stations along Highway 3. Got a new level 3 charging station in Christina Lake, and then a couple new ones in Rock Creek as well at the Riverside Center.
So Mark, I'm extremely envious of your EVs. We want EVs in Roslyn too. What kind of a vehicle are you getting for the 4th one? Is it another car, or are you?
Another car. We'd love to get the fire engines, but they are extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So it's not it looks like it'll be cost prohibitive for a while for the larger vehicles, but the cars we have had really good success on. We have staff that go from here to meetings in Midway and back on a single charge, which is really good. When we initially were looking at this as part of the pilot project, we looked at, it would be a really good implementation to consider it for the building inspectors in this area, because they're really not doing long trips. But as it turns out, we've found that those regular trips that our staff do over to Grand Forks and Christina Lake and Midway and Greenwood, it's a really cost-effective way to go.
One of the things the 100% renewable plan had talked about is some of the local governments, banding together and trying to get a sort of a bulk price. And we're hoping to get an EV soon too. Maybe we should go in together when you get your next one. We can buy a couple of them. Maybe Diane, maybe Warfield's ready for one. What we really want are pickup trucks though. But even so, we could use a car for our building inspector as well, or bylaw officer. So let's have staff talk to staff, perhaps. Yeah,
we would love to do that. When we purchased the 2 in 2020, we were hoping to get a volume discount. 2 didn't cut it. So if we can get more, that may up our chances. Yeah, well, I think if we talk to all of the communities that are involved in the 100% renewable, there might be some uptake. It's worth a conversation before you put that order in. Sure. So, yeah, that's great. You guys are really inspirational in that. That's great. All right, and then I just have one final slide. Not that this really relates to City of Roslyn, because we don't provide building or bylaw enforcement to you, but I noticed you're going through a parallel process now. We hired our first dedicated bylaw enforcement officer a year ago. She's been doing great work for us and have recently adopted the various dispute bylaw adjudication bylaws and policies, screening officer policy, bylaw enforcement policy, to give her all the tools to operate effectively. And I think just the opportunity to provide bylaw notices or fines is going to really improve our bylaw enforcement effectiveness across the region. So just an interesting note that we've gone through a parallel process to what it looks like you guys are doing as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right, and that's it for me.
Okay, council, anybody have any questions? That was a very informative presentation. We really appreciate you coming up here. And Diane, you too, Ms. Chair. I can't see you, but I know you're there somewhere. There you go. Anybody have a question? These guys? No? All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, okay, bye. We're now going to have Andres Lucas from the Tourism Roslin Society. And Andres, you're up. Andres, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Hopefully you're just getting ready. We see your screen. Oh, he's coming back. We've lost Andres for the moment. This doesn't happen in a live council meeting. Don't have a delegation suddenly go silent.
Did anyone see that their latest thank you little web? That was pretty good. I enjoyed that.
I didn't see it. Where was that? Is it Tourism Roslin?
Just little snapshots or videoettes or whatever they're called of business owners mostly thanking people for obeying the COVID rules, and yeah, a close to the ski season. I think it was nice.
Right. Yeah, I knew that was coming. So, okay, let's see.
Did it help?
Andres, we see your.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We no longer see your screen, and we don't.
That's okay, but you can hear me.
We can hear you. Yes.
Excellent. I'll just share my screen, and I think, tell me, Kathy, that we're good to go.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. One sec. Sorry about that. Okay. So welcome everyone. And thanks for having me. My name is Andras Lukács. I am the Executive Director of Tourism Roslin.
Andres, let me interrupt you real quick. Do you want us to see your face, or do you want us to see you looking very serious in the black and white photo?
Oh, man.
It's up to you. I just want to make sure you're doing what you want.
I don't know what I want. I just want this to work. Is it better now?
Now I see you, but we don't see your screen. So
okay. I'm so sorry. This is fun.
Yeah, it's okay. You're doing fine. We're
okay. Now it's working. Now you see everything.
Now it's perfect.
Okay. So I won't introduce myself anymore because I did it 4 times probably. But I'm here to present our 5-year strategic business plan for our MRDT renewal and ask the City of Roslin for a letter of support in this pursuit. Before I talk about it, I just want to acknowledge that we just completed a very successful ski season yesterday. So we're very happy. Obviously, the local tourism industry is not in the greatest place financially given the pandemic, but I think we have a lot to celebrate and be proud of. I believe that the industry showed tremendous leadership and care as we navigated through this season together while keeping the safety of our community, our staff, and our guests as a top priority. And I want to thank the residents of our community for supporting local businesses And I want to thank Mayor Moore, council, and city staff for supporting the tourism industry throughout this this season and this past year. It's been pretty challenging, but we're getting through it. With that being said, I'll talk a little bit about the MRDT. So a year and a half ago, Tourism Rossland embarked in a strategic planning session to figure out where we want to be in the next 5 years. And the thought behind it was that we're going to use the strategic plan for our MRDT renewal that's due also every 5 years. So we adopted the strategic plan in September of 2020 and have a new vision for Rossland and define the role of Tourism Rossland and how we're going to work towards that vision. And that strategic plan that many of you actually have been involved created the backbone of our MRDT renewal plan. The MRDT is, for those of you who are not familiar with, it stands for the Municipal and Regional District Tax, and it provides funding for local tourism marketing programs and projects in order to grow our tourism revenues or visitation, keep local jobs, and amplify our tourism marketing effort. It is a tax, it's a 3% tax that is paid by the purchaser of the accommodation. It is collected by the accommodator, funneled through the Ministry of Finance, and then it comes back to a designated entity. In this case, in Rossland, it's Tourism Rossland. I won't get into a lot of details about it. There's a lot of interesting intrigues with how this works, actually, but I won't get into it. But if anyone has any questions, please let me know, and I'll answer that. The MRDT is basically the de facto foundation of all destination marketing organizations' work. And there's a lot of municipalities that collect the MRDT. So just from our region, you can see that almost all municipalities collect MRDT. Some of them collect at 2%, some of them at 3%. Most of our, or actually all of our competitors that we look at as competitors are MRDT municipalities. So this is the norm in the province now. Tourism Rossland has been collecting MRDT since 2006-2007 fiscal year, and we switched to the 2%, and then we switched to a 3% in the 2016-2017 renewal cycle. So you can see a little jump in our revenue there. Part of the jump is obviously we went from a 2% tax to a 3% tax. Our highest revenue so far in a fiscal year was the 2018-2019, where we were at $174,000. The 2019-20 year would have been probably on par or better than that year. But obviously COVID hit at the very end, and there were some provincial tax policies that allowed businesses not to remit taxes for February and March, which is our highest month when it comes to MRDT. So we did not receive those until September of this fiscal or past fiscal year, 2020-2021 fiscal year. We'll never know what that would have actually been. Also this year, so that for this past fiscal, 2020-2021, this data is only up till December, but that $79,000 actually includes some February and March MRDT. So we'll be very low. We're obviously, our visitation is very low. Our hotel occupancy is very low. So with that in mind, just wanted to show you past 5 years of Tourism Rossland incomes and how the MRDT plays a very significant role in our spending. Obviously, our grants go up and down based on grant cycles and what we're successful of getting. But the MRDT and grants are basically the most important part of it. We do have a lot of co-op programs, pay-to-play marketing opportunities where our local partners, industry partners buy into some of the initiatives that we are leading. The Red Resort Association is a very important partner that provides a very stable source of funding for us as well. And out of this, our marketing budget obviously changes the way our financials are changing. So in the 2019-2020 fiscal year, we had our highest marketing budget at $226K, and we're actually in a very good financial position as an organization right now. And when we can start marketing again fully, we are confident that we'll be able to maintain that $250,000 plus investment. So we'll have a very rapid recovery. Just want to go through a couple of marketing program highlights. I'm not gonna get into a lot of details about it, but just main program areas, brochure and map programs that we do, print advertising that's getting a lot less important now as we're moving forward. Print is not very responsive to how PHOs change and where we can market with print. So we try to stay away from print as much as possible, but there are some publications where we like to have our advertisements, events promotions, and event support. We did a lot of those in the past. Obviously, this last year, events were not really happening, but that's going to be a very important part moving forward. Photo asset and video asset development. It's very important for us. That's where we spend a lot of our energy. Someone just mentioned that video that we just dropped today, which I think it's very, very great. And obviously we use these photo and video assets to leverage on social media and through digital marketing channels, and they're also available for our stakeholders to share. Media and influencer hosting is an interesting one because we have not been hosting media or influencers basically in the past year, but that used to be a very, very important program area. And once we can return to normal operations, that will be important. Website development used to happen outside of the organization, but we moved a lot of that in. So we're able to do most of our work in-house. The co-op programs that I just mentioned earlier, where we partner with our industry stakeholders to amplify messages and ensuring that it's about Rossland. So there's a destination element to it as well. And then trade show support, which obviously has been on hold lately, but we want to support our industry partners for trade shows. So those are the main program areas that we work on. As I mentioned earlier, we're very confident actually in the industry that once we can start marketing again, and once we can welcome guests from Canada and abroad, our recovery will be quite rapid. We are actually very confident about that. So the foundation of that recovery will be is the MRDT and making sure that we're collecting that tax going forward. So with that in mind, we developed the 5-year business plan. That's an important part of our MRDT renewal that is up this year. We have to, it's up at the end of the year, but the province, Destination British Columbia, and the government has to review it. So we have to submit it in a timely manner soon. We have 3 main objectives in this going forward for the next 5 years. One of them is the sales and marketing part, increasing visitation and spending in neat periods, which originally we thought neat periods will be a couple spots here and there in the winter, and then making sure that our shoulder season in summer is our inventory is being sold. Now with COVID, obviously we have to focus on winter and making sure that our winter season returns to where we want it to be. The second objective is to continuously improve Rossland visitor servicing and experiential quality. So that's mostly focusing on visitors who are already in town, ensuring that they have a remarkable experience in Rossland, that they have the information they need, and they are able to get the experiences that they're looking for. And the third objective is more of a destination management, destination development objective, is to make sure that we're part of a coalition that's building a compelling and authentic destination. The documents that I sent, all of these, we have 19 strategies that support these objectives. I have them listed. I won't go into a lot of details about them. just mention a couple of things about them. So the underlying thing of this is market research. We need to do a lot more market research because we live in a very data-rich era and we are a very data-poor organization. So we need to really understand where we're spending money and why we're spending money in order to maximize our return on investment. Obviously, that requires us to constantly monitor what we're doing. I mentioned asset development, photo and video asset development. It's very important. It's going to be super important in the future as well. And our collateral development, we will look at it critically, make sure that print materials that we're actually producing are the ones that really need to be printed. And we want to make the rest available as a downloadable piece to decrease our environmental footprint. Events will play a very significant role in the next 5 years of Tourism Rossland, at least in our plans. When events can return, we will have a lot more robust event support program from the organization to ensure that we can support these events and market these events that are coming to our community. We'll continue social media marketing. We have been very successful in the past few years of growing our audiences. Print and digital advertising, paid advertising will continue, and also media and influencer hosting when it's safe to have media and influencers in our community. And the big and very important part is direct sales meeting and corporate group support. To fill our non-peak inventory, we need to have meetings, we need to have corporate events, we need to have retreat, we need to have weddings. So we need to look at those markets and ensure that our partners have the resources and the support they need to secure bringing those here. So that's kind of like the marketing side of things. On the visitor experiential side is obviously constantly review the transportation experience and improve it where we can, or advocate for improvements where we can. We want to make sure that visitors have information available when they want it and how they want it. We will continue, part of this is content management on the main touch points with our visitors, and obviously provide business, service, and training programs through our partners to the local businesses and tourism community. Business collaboration and networking is a very important strategy.
Chris, excuse me.
Yes.
Could you go back a slide? Just can you tell me a bit more about transportation experience improvements? What do you mean there?
So it's, if you're aware of it, we are supporting through the RMI program, we are supporting a couple of transportation pieces. One of them is the Rossland ski bus that just finished running yesterday. We are a big part of that program that transfers our visitors and residents and sometimes staff as well between the mountain, Red Mountain neighborhood and downtown Rossland. The other big piece of it is the Spokane shuttle. That's obviously wasn't operational this season, but that has been something that Tourism Rossland subsidized in the past. With our partners, Red Resort, Whitewater Ski Resort, and Nelson County Lake Tourism. That has been very successful, and it's basically a business that's almost self-sustainable. Very little subsidies are spent on that. So we started looking at a similar business model to do a Kelowna shuttle, maybe bring people from Kelowna airport, which would open up the Toronto market for us, so the Toronto Kelowna direct flight, and then a convenience shuttle down to Rossland. So those are the main things that Tourism Rossland is involved in, but we're also constantly looking at air access, whether it's the Trail Airport or the Castlegar Airport as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So resident engagement, it is extremely important for the industry to maintain our social license and keep the support of the community. So we will continue with resident engagement, ensuring that our residents understand the value of the tourism industry in our community, also understand the experiences available, and they can really look at our community through the lens of a visitor sometimes. We want to be part of amenity development advocacies to ensure that the tourism lens is applied to developments. We have a very good relationship with the City of Rossland as we help manage the Resort Municipality Initiative funding. We're going to go through a resort development strategy exercise soon if the funding is extended by the province. So that's something that we're looking forward to in the next couple of years. And obviously, we want to be the voice of the industry at municipal, regional, provincial tables where it comes to infrastructure development to ensure that the tourism industry is top of mind when these decisions are being made. So these are the key strategies that support the three pillars of our plan. And where we are with the MRDT renewal right now is that we are working on getting support from the MRDT community. So we're just making sure that the MRDT community is in support. We did a few stakeholder engagement sessions in the past couple of weeks. Some of you have been there. So we gathered some feedback from there. We're getting letters of support from tourism stakeholders, and we need to ask the city, obviously, for a letter of support as well. And then once this is done, everything is put together, then the board of directors of Tourism Rossland will approve this package and will send it in to the province, who will review it, which is a roughly 6-month process. And our hope is that by the end of the year, we'll have a renewed MRDT plan for the next 5 years, and we can continue going through the steps of our strategic plan. And with that in mind, I think I am done with the presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Does anybody have any questions? Sorry, I muted myself and couldn't get back to my screen. Any questions for Andres? Put your hand up because I don't see everybody on the screen at the same time. And okay, there we go. Terry.
Hey again, Andres. One other question. So there's been anecdotally, or I've just read and seen a tremendous increase in RV traffic. What thoughts does Tourism Rossland have around how we're sort of equipped to receive those folks, and just where they are on your radar?
So in our strategic plan, we looked at RV. It's important. I mean, if you want to grow summer, it's going to be important for us. Obviously, we do not have necessarily the facilities. I mean, we have the Lions Campground, but we don't have the big RV facilities. So there has been some discussion in the industry about maybe putting in a private facility somewhere, and that's definitely on the radar. I'm sure that it's going to be a little bit slowed down with the current fiscal situation, but that is definitely something that we want to look at and explore. A very good synergy between the RV crowd and outdoor recreation is golf. Golfers love RVs. When we're managing the Kootenay Golf Trail, the golf courses that we're actually able to host RVs, they get a lot of direct bookings just through that. So that's something is on our radar, but you know, it has to make sense financially for the partners involved.
Thanks. Andy has a question.
Thanks, Andres. A question regarding our upcoming OCP and what the Tourism Rossland's input may be towards that.
From Tourism Rossland's perspective, as I mentioned, you know, I mean, community engagement is extremely important. Part of the reason we can sell Rossland and we can have this experience is because of this community. So in our strategic plan, it is in very high and very early, we talk about actually, that we want to make sure that the tourism industry respects the growth process of Rossland and respects community values. So Tourism Rossland just wants to align with the city as closely as possible and really work collaboratively to grow the industry, but make sure that we are not losing what makes Rossland special.
Yeah, and Tourism Rossland is one of the stakeholder groups that's being included in the engagement process in that OCP review. So they'll have a big role. Lots of involvement in that. Terry, did you have another question? Anyone else have any questions? I had one, and this is maybe a little off the wall, but in your objective number 3 of building the authentic destination, we do hear some rumblings in the community about the social license of a lot of unauthorized short-term rentals. And I'm just curious whether there's anything Tourism Rossland can do to help the city as we try and kind of police that and go after that. Do you see a role for Tourism Rossland there?
We would love to have a role and we would love to solve that. Obviously one of our main stakeholder group is the MRDT group. And because Airbnb now is an official MRDT partner for us, those stakeholders are very important. Some issues where we see is that we have no enforcement capacity. If the city comes up with a plan, we would be happy to assist as much as possible, but we cannot do anything really about enforcing. Other jurisdictions, what they found very useful is actually just send a cease and desist letter and they just disappear. Like that's the city of Victoria hired a lawyer and they just did that. All their unauthorized Airbnbs just get a cease and desist, and that was it. That's basically ended all of it. And obviously they go through it once a year or whenever, how often they go through. And we'll be happy to help as much as possible and as much as our resources allow, because again, that it has far further reaching impacts than just the MRDT. It affects our community. It affects how our neighborhoods are constructed, noise levels. So it is definitely something that's top of mind for the industry.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking so much of enforcement as more to sort of help us find some of the people, is one of the things. Okay, Chris, your hand is up.
Thanks, Kathy. Andras, you mentioned that Airbnb is the only platform that monitors and collects MRDT. Is there any movement towards getting some of the other platforms, Expedia or any of the other booking agents to collect MRDT?
There was prior to the pandemic, that was a high priority for the government and Destination BC. With the pandemic, I haven't heard anything and any movement about it. So to be honest, I just had a conversation with the province about VRBO, and basically they said, just because as part of the process of going through this MRDT, I have to engage with stakeholders. So I needed to know whether I need to reach out to VRBO, and they said, no, don't worry about it right now. That's just we're not there yet. So VRBO is not there yet, but we're hoping that it's going to get there.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Tourism Rossland? Thank you, Andres. That was a very informative and interesting presentation. And I know it's been a tough year, but you're doing great, and the city supports Tourism Rossland. So thank you very much. Okay, we are going to, yes, goodbye. We're going to move on to adopting some minutes. I do want to say, I do see that one of our guests and the attendees has a hand up, but we actually are through public input and we don't actually chat with the public in the meeting. So Cesare, I know that's you. If you want to send an email or something, that would be great. Okay, so I need the minutes of the Committee of the Whole on March 5th be adopted. Can I have a mover? Okay, Janice moves, Stu seconds. Any comments or corrections? This was our OCP and 5-year financial plan, I think. Nothing going? Okay, all in favor? All right, thank you. And then our minutes of the regular meeting on March 8th of 2021, a mover. Chris, and Andy. Any comments or suggestions of changes? All good? Call the question. Okay. And then we've got minutes of the Sustainability Commission on March 17th. Do I have a mover? Dirk, a seconder. Chris, any comments or corrections there? We want to welcome Matt Watkins as the new chair of the Energy Task Force and joining the Sustainability Commission. Yay, Matt, that's great. All in favor? Okay. Then we've got minutes of the Committee of the Whole on March 22nd, and that these be adopted. These are our CBT CIP allocations. Mover? Janice and Andy, any comments? All in favor? Okay, and we did figure out that $5 issue there that was a burning issue. Thanks for staff for looking after that. Okay, so now we're going to move a couple things. We're going to first talk about the tennis agreement. So that is on page 309 of your agenda, if you want to go to 309. And we'll just get a motion up there. The suggested motion is that council approves the draft Tennis Society facility use agreement, and that we approve adjusting the, well, let's just do the first one first, so that we approve the agreement. Do I have a mover? Somebody want to move it? Andy moves it, a seconder. Dirk seconds. Andy, you have comments on the tennis agreement? You're muted.
Just that I read the concerns of the society, and I appreciate that it makes it a little more onerous for them to be entering into a little bit more complicated an agreement. But as pointed out by you, Mary Merriweather, that we are in a position to try and standardize right across the board with all our other our community services and such, then I think it's necessary for us to protect ourselves and make it fair to all. So, yeah, gonna have to stick with what we are.
Dirk, you were the seconder, right?
Yep, I mean, it is a draft, so things could change. It would just be nice if the city could assist the tennis facilities or the tennis society in finding those resources. Seems like a kind thing to do.
Which resources are you referring to specifically?
Well, it sounded like there were questions with the insurance or where to get it or how much to get. I know the insurance is a complicated issue. I try to avoid it at all possible. So yeah, city has excellent experience with this, and hopefully they can help out.
And we do have our recreation staff, working with the tennis folks, and hopefully there'll be some synergy there. Janice, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Sam made a good point. I had actually written it down myself as well, that the Tennis Society doesn't have an exclusive use of the facility as some of our other leasees or users do. They have no way to keep the public off it. It's more like a park or a trail than it is like a lockable facility. So I can see how it's a little challenging for to write up an agreement that continues to hold the spirit of what has gone on in the past. I don't think the city has any intent to download additional responsibilities to the society, but we do have to somehow create an agreement that puts them arm's length so that they can get grants and do some other work. So as a draft, I'm kind of okay with it, but I don't want to stuff something down the Tennis Society's throat that they're not happy with. They've done great work for us, and I'd like to keep them doing some great work for the city and for all the people who use the tennis courts and may possibly use the tennis courts in the future as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Other comments? I mean, I think we do say this is a draft, so if there's things that we want to suggest to staff, go back and tweak a little bit without micromanaging. I'm going to call on Stu and then Chris, and I'm not sure which of you had your hand up first. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't clear to me that the Tennis Society has an interest in actually operating the facility. The requirements of operating, meeting the city's requirements to operate a public facility to deal with our liability and just the practical details of operating a facility like that. I I really just don't understand what the challenges are, you know, other than the fact that this tennis society doesn't want to actually do it. Are there other options? I mean, you know, if this tennis society doesn't want to actually ensure the facility, provide, you know, the regular maintenance and the bookings and the various things that need to happen, you know, I mean, have we had that discussion? I mean, they clearly have an interest in operating it the way it has been done in the past. That doesn't seem like that's going to work moving forward. Is there a willingness for them to step up to this higher level of responsibility, or do we need to do it differently?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, for one thing, they're not insuring the facility. They're getting liability insurance on what happens, you know, to people. Like if the you know, something happens to the facility, it's a city facility, and the city is still, you know, on the hook in that. I'm going to go to Chris, and then I'm going to get Christy to comment. Oh, and Janice. Janice, before Christy or after? Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Questions and a couple things. One, the contributions that historically that the society has made, you know, I commend them. It's fantastic, and it's an amazing little facility. Unfortunately, the facility is degrading to a point where it's going to require the city to step in and help. So us putting that into our budgets, I think, is important. The liability part, I understand insurance is what it is. My question, how many members are in the society? And how many directors? Is there somebody that could answer that?
Christy, do you have that information? And maybe if Sam's still on the line, he could tell us.
I don't actually have a, yeah, it looks like Sam's got his hand up there.
Okay, so Rachel, let Sam in there. I can't see anything. Okay, Sam, have you got some information about number of directors and number of members?
Yeah, there's 5 directors. In terms of membership's voluntary, so we don't insist. There's far more people using the courts. I think last year there might have been, it's on our financial report that's attached to your thing. There was 7 family memberships and 16 individuals, but that's not a reflection of how many people use the courts, because I think we collected $400 or $500 in drop-in fees at $2 a pop. So, you know, we don't push the memberships. The membership doesn't buy you anything. All it does is help support the court maintenance. It doesn't actually give you any privileges or anything to the courts. It doesn't get you into programs. It doesn't give you court priority. So we don't really push the memberships. There are a lot of people from out of town, from Trail on that come up to play on Saturdays and Sundays as well. So
it sounds like a significant amount of public use.
Yeah, families will drop in because there's no advantage to a membership. They generally, you know, it's kind of a voluntary thing. The money's not as important to us as keeping the facility running, and it's not a lot of money that we collect. The courts don't take a lot of money to run.
They just take a lot of capital to improve.
That's that 50, 60-year cycle is this big one.
Yeah.
The tennis society generally functions with a $3,000 grant. We were able to do all of our maintenance on a 8 to 10 year cycle. It's this big one that's 50 or 60 years, and none of the executive has ever been through a resurfacing of the courts like this. Like, this is a major, plus the infrastructure that seems to be giving way on one of the walls. It's something that we've never been through.
Yeah, and that is kind of a different thing. You know, to Stu's point, I mean, do you feel that this agreement that is being presented to you puts you in a position of having to do more than you've done in the past, or are we just basically sort of codifying what you've already done? Which is sort of the way I was looking at it.
Well, we've always done it in the past. I mean, all we do is maintain the courts. That's what we do. We go down, I think, you know, they'll clean them. We do our daily maintenance, which is the cleaning and the sweeping and put up the brooms, and then the gardening and the washrooms. Last year we did all the cleaning every day. Somebody cleaned all the washrooms because of COVID. So, and then we do our annual repairs, which is the crack fills and the taping and anything else, the fences. And then on an 8 to 9 year cycle, a 10-year cycle, we were actually doing the repainting, the resurfacing, which is just the rubberized surface and the lines. We were taking care of all of that.
Right.
So the agreement itself, really part of it was exclusive. It was just the language more than anything else, saying that first of all, it was a club. We're a society, not a club. And the club kind of implied to us that, you had to be a member to join, you had to be a member to play, and that really isn't what we're about.
No, and that was, I don't want to speak for Christy who put this together, but that was certainly not our intent, was to imply exclusivity at all. We understand it's a public court, it's supported by taxpayer money, so we want every citizen of Roslyn and anyone else to come and enjoy it. Christy, do you have any comments on what we've been talking about?
No, the only comment would just be that the agreement that was there in the past for the tennis society, it doesn't align with our standardized agreements that we have with other also outdoor facilities like the Lions campground and places like that. So the key here that I'm trying to get through with my report there is that the city does not have it in their budget or in their plan at this moment to go in and do this maintenance stuff, inspections, maintenance, daily checks on the courts. That's always been done by the Tennis Society in the past. So in my alternatives there on the report, it was, here's the standardized agreement for the society. If we are going to formalize things moving forward as they have been done in the past, if there's another alternative that you guys want us to look at, which is the city increasing our budget and our involvement, and I can let Scott comment on that if he'd like to, then I need that directive from council to go investigate how much that would be, we'd have to add into the budget for us to have more involvement, to take some of that off of the society's plate. Because to be fair to the society, the requirements with inspections and, making sure as the courts age and also just as things progress, they do go up. We need to, we are aligning all of our facilities, and I'll let Scott comment on that, on more regular documented inspections for a variety of reasons. And we can't allow the tennis courts to be an exception as we continue to proceed forward with improving these processes. So it either needs to be on the tennis society's plate, or we need to go and investigate how much it's going to cost us and have you guys approve that additional allocation for us to take it on as the city.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that for sure. I just feel like it's a little awkward to be putting that kind of responsibility of inspections on a society. I mean, do the Lions do all their inspections? We don't send the city down to check out how their facilities are. It just feels like we're mixing to me. But okay, hold on. I'm going to let Stu and Janice speak first. Stu?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the same world. I mean, the regulatory environment in which we operate, all sorts of things, is changing. And, yes, I understand how we used to do everything with just, handshake agreements and people doing their best, and we sort of bumbled along like we did with lots of different things. But that's not how we operate our facilities, and it's not how we should. And, this is no disrespect to the Tennis Society, but, that we either need to get them to acknowledge that this is changing and put it to them, do they want to step up? And maybe it's not reasonable. Maybe we do have to apply, think about alternatives. But, I think we owe them the respect to give them the opportunity to step up and work in this new environment. And if not, well, then we have to explore other options. We can't just say, well, we're not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying that. Janice? It's
Well,
just
I was
who's
just going
going
to
to do
say
it.
that the tennis society, there seems to be a parallel between the tennis society and I would say the Rawson Arena Society. We don't ask the Rawson Arena Society to sign an agreement, but we understand that they are supportive and, would, if we allowed them to, and have done work to improve the facility that they have a vested interest in. So it would be nice to be able to find some kind of middle ground. And I mean, obviously the tennis club has been able to do sort of daily maintenance for less than $3,000 a season. Granted, if we have to pay Public Works to do that, it's going to cost more. But there should be a way that, and it is our facility. We still, just like with any other of our facilities, you know, for the larger items and reporting, we are still going to have to do that. And we haven't done it in the past. And, you know, maybe that's not on the society to do that work. Maybe it's on the city,
Right.
the regulatory stuff.
I'm going to call on Christy, and then I'm going to let Sam has his hand up too. So Christy, you first, and then Sam.
Janice's comment about the RAS is something that I've had in my mind, is if the council makes a directive for me to look into the cost of us taking on more of that maintenance, then there we could present the option to the Tennis Society of them moving more into that RAS role. An advocate for the courts, the fundraising piece stays in place, but not the operational side. However, we would have to look at whether that's something that we can handle in the Works Department. Whether we have the capacity, which my understanding, I'll let Scott comment on that. I can't comment on that at all. And then the other side would be if that's of interest to the society, as if we present that, that also comes with removing some of that control. Like we would then retain the fees and things like that. And the role of the society would be just advocacy and fundraising for the facility, but not operations. So that's something I could look into, but I have absolutely no idea what the impact on the city or the society would be at that point. I would need that directive from council to look into that.
Okay, I'm going to let Sam comment, and then I'll go to Stu. And I'm not sure if Scott had Scott's there in the dark, but I think he wants to speak. Okay, so first Sam, go ahead, and then Stu, and then Scott.
Yeah, I never really had my hand up. The only other thing I have to add is the insurance is taken care of. We've got through Sports BC. It would have been nice last year if somebody had told us about Sports BC, but they didn't. But we've got that figured out and straightened out. We should have a certificate within a couple of weeks for the city.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, from what you're hearing of this discussion, does any of this sound appealing to you? Like have the city take over more of the operational maintenance stuff and you guys really just be advocates? And
I guess, I mean, it's something we have to discuss as a board of directors. I'm not the board, so I can't make that decision.
Right.
Certainly
not to make a decision, but just does it sound interesting to you, or does it make your skin crawl and you want to hide under a rug?
No, the society is still willing to do the maintenance to the courts and everything we've always done. The added stuff, like I was looking at one of the old agreements and it said, you know, under city's responsibilities were weekly inspection for the cleanup of garbage, trimming of weeds and grass where necessary. So over the years, the city's dropped that role. They've really dropped all of the work they used, or they were contractually obligated to do under the old agreements. So it's really shifted more to the society now. Whether the society would be interested in having the city do it, I don't know. I can't speak for the board.
Okay, Stu and then Scott, or Janice, were you in there too? I can't remember. I gotta write it down. Stu.
Yeah, and presumably there can still be a volunteer contribution if there's interest in doing that, as long as that's clearly defined and, you know, the responsibility for the essential work and the documented inspections and those sort of things that we quite obviously need, you know, as long as that's being done in a way where it's actually accountable. I mean, there's lots of blended arrangements with the way this can work, but, you know, it just needs to be, you know, we need to be the ones that set the criteria for what needs to get done and the accountability for that, and then how that all works. I mean, I think we have a bit of flexibility there.
Yeah, okay. Scott, hello.
I apologize for the darkness.
The Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness has returned. There we go.
There you
A little bit better.
Good.
Yeah, I think the first step is talking to Sam and the society again and finding out the clarity of what exactly the expectations are. As far as public works goes, every facility like the tennis courts is similar to a playground. There's expectations out there that things need to be inspected, and it's not a detailed inspection, but things need to be documented. And again, if the onus is put on the city, there has to be a cost allocated to that, and we don't have that in our budget currently at this time. But I think the first step is going back to the society and discussing this and seeing what kind of partnerships we can develop on this. But yeah, there is stringent rules in place that need to be abided to, and part of that is inspections and making sure the courts are safe. And not saying they haven't been, but there has to be some documentation to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe we're hearing enough kind of uncertainty of what's going on here, maybe the best thing to do tonight is just refer it back to staff. You guys have a little more discussion about that, get some clarity on what the society would like to take on and what they wouldn't, bearing in mind, you know, we do own those courts, and I think we have to be careful. We don't like it when the provincial government downloads to us, and I don't think we should, you know, download to the society either. Christy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, perhaps you could look at the second motion in the recommendation, though, as that is a little bit more time sensitive, as that contract, the Tennis Society is the only one who hasn't signed theirs yet. And these discussions quite likely could end up with more work for the Tennis Society in the end. And if it does, the intent of that is for them to be able to come back next year and present that to council again.
Yes, we will. We do. I just want to make sure we get this part done first. So we have a motion on the table, which we can defeat, and then we can do a refer to staff, and then we can do the 1 year thing. Is everybody good with that? So all in favor of the motion that nobody wants to support, raise your hand. Good, nobody. All opposed? Everybody, right? Okay, so can I have a motion? Can I have a motion to refer this conversation back to staff? Janice makes the motion, a seconder. Somebody, okay, Dirk seconds. Any further discussion? I think not. All in favor? Yeah, good. Okay, so now let's have a motion to change the agreement to a 1 year one, the second motion that was in the staff report. Can I have a mover? Janice, Andy seconds. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Great. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. That was a good discussion, and I think it's important to get this right. So, okay, now we're going to move on to our next one, the Iron Colt thing, which is on page 230 of your agenda. Let me get there so I can be there too. And thank you for members of attendees who have been waiting patiently to talk about this. So the proposed notice of motion is in the packet. I'm not going to read it because it has all the conditions that are there, but I would like a mover. Somebody move. Okay, Janice moves and Dirk seconds. And Janice, you can start us off. We've got the motion for the DP and the A through D conditions that were attached. Go for it, Janice.
Yeah, I am. Thanks. Yeah, I'm good with the with issuing a development permit on this. I think that the vast majority of our concerns on the documentation are covered by item D in the building permit portion of the build. And you know, I appreciate the thoroughness that the applicant has provided us documentation with. So yeah, it's a diversification of our housing stock. It's meant to be it's not meant to be affordable. It's meant to be a alternative to single family homes. And it looks like, although the design isn't everyone's cup of tea, it looks like it will, it meets all the criteria as outlined by the development about the design review panel. So I'm good with it.
Okay. Dirk, you were the seconder, right?
Yep.
Yep.
I actually quite like this one. I appreciate it's fairly respectful of the neighbors, unlike some that we've seen recently that loom over everything. So I appreciate that. I do have concerns about the traffic, but evidently that's just my concern to bear and nothing we can do about it.
Okay, comments from others. Chris, and then Terry.
I concur with Dirk on the traffic. It's 30% increase is going to be quite a bit of traffic, new cars. But also with that, and I also am excited about this. I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to have some much needed housing. If I were to look at D, like Janice did as well, if I were to add one thing to it, I'd add parking. I looked at 5 visitor parking spots for a lot of units, and I think that parking is going to spill out onto the street. Now, they're within requirement, I'm sure, but if I would add a word to the list of words, our parking would be one.
Okay, so that would you'd want to add that as just a little amendment to condition D.
Yes, please.
Okay. Someone want to second that? Terry seconds that. Okay. Any further discussion on adding parking in there as an amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Okay, good. Okay, other comments? Let's see, I had Chris and then I had Terry, yeah. And then
Yeah, I
Stu.
just, yeah, I was at the, attended the design review panel meeting, and I thought they did a terrific job of outlining the program, especially at the development permit stage. They've done a lot of good thinking and a lot of good work. I like it. It's, yeah, from the aesthetics of it, there was the roof line, which I sort of tilted towards that. I think it roof overhangs, but that's a small piece. I think it addresses the density issue and housing mix in Rosslyn is a good thing. Yeah, parking and traffic. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about traffic and parking, and I don't worry about it as much as some others maybe, although McLeod gets busy there, but you know, I think we can't keep being slaves to cars. So that's the deal. So I'm in favor.
We are slaves to cars.
Wow.
Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, given that the land is already zoned, I don't think I've got a whole lot to add, but it just occurred to me that it's perhaps an incentive in our OCP process to perhaps think about the wisdom of having multifamily developments on the perimeter of the community and the traffic issues those create, and also having multifamily developments in areas where the infrastructure is not actually sized for that. Also seems a poor planning that maybe we can address moving forward.
Okay. Other comments? Andy, you haven't said anything?
I concur with Stuart on that. I think it's really important that with the OCP process that we do review some of these issues. And I'm really concerned too about the traffic issue. I think, you know, to add that much new residential build basically in the McLeod, and I recognize that, you know, there's going to be a variety of people going in different directions, but you look at the configuration of streets it takes to come from the south through town to get up to that as well. It's going to be substantial increase. And I mean, we know the pinch points on McLeod. We've had lots of issues on that street already. We've tried to reduce the speed limit, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just going to add to the problems there.
But at this point, all we could really do with this is form and character because the zoning's already there.
I realize that. But again, it does for me. It reminds me, and we got into this conversation with the issue on Washington Street, the project there, that, you know, things have changed a lot for Roslyn in the last 20 years or in 10 years. And I think it behooves us as a couple with this OCP process coming forward to really look at what we're doing, thinking about a long-term community need, including individual neighborhoods where these larger multifamily buildings are proposed, and the zoning appreciates that we've already done that historically, but things have changed a lot. And you know, to the developers' goals, they're going to want to maximize their profit. So they're going to want to build out these multifamilies to as much as they can to take advantage of their profitability and the costs, and to try and keep the costs reasonable for the purchaser. But again, does it meet all our obligations to our neighbors and to the rest of the community? So that's, for me, that's really important for us to review that in the upcoming process.
Yeah, and I think in the OCP, we will be doing that for sure. That's something, and Stu's point is a great one as well. We need to be a little more focused and I don't know what, I can't think of the word, but my issue was, I think this would look great up at the ski hill, or it would look great in, you know, Vancouver or Edmonton or somewhere. But for Roslyn, to me, I'm actually surprised the design review panel didn't have more concerns with it, because I don't think it really fits the character of our community nearly as well personally. But I realize that's personal aesthetic. You know, I look at the building that's hopefully going to go up on the MCON lot. I think that fits in our community very well, even though it's big. It's bigger than this one, but it isn't a massive gray. And, you know, our multifamily design guidelines say, well, you break it up in different levels. This one barely breaks up, you know, as far as I can tell. Plus you use colors that are from nature. Well, the color of this building, like the one on Washington, is the color of a burnt forest. So sure, that's nature, but I'm not sure it's the nature that we want to promote, right? Although, you know, it could happen. But anyway, based on that, you know, based on the fact that to me, it looks like a very massive, I like some elements of it, but I find it very massive. So, you know, I'm not thrilled with it. And as Jenna said, well, not everything that we approve is one individual's cup of tea, but it does meet, you know, most of the things. Now, Cesare is on the line, and we usually don't have people speak unless there's a question for them. I don't think there's a question for Cesare about this, but I'm going to let him speak anyway, because he's been very patient. So, hello, Cesare.
Hi, did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, so first question about when we talk, maybe this way will be better. Is better? You hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. Yeah, we will hear you the first time. That's good.
Good. So if we're talking about traffic, I will mention that this is rezoning already. So, you know, that was started for traffic before.
Yeah,
but,
we know that's not on the table tonight, so we don't really need to talk about that.
But when I talk with the neighbors about this, most of the people, this condominium is for the people. This will be for the people which are 55 over. So these people will be retired or semi-retired working home. This is not for the people who working and he will be driving every day to work. This is absolutely different, like MCOLAT. So that's true. That's absolutely true. That's one story, because I know that's one thing. Another thing about the parking is big underground parking. Basically, everybody got to. We have our architect on the line. If somebody got a question about the massive of the building, this building, like we talk about design community, is separate like the 4 units. And when you look on the line, so basically this building will be same high like my duplex, will be not higher, because will be lower, going lower to the ground. So, and when we're talking about maximi, like Andy said, this is rezoning for 16 units. We don't have land in the Roseland. We have limited space in the Roseland. So if this is rezoning for 60 units, you know, we won't build 16 units. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone have any more comments on this? And Stacy, if you have a comment, I'm happy to let you speak if you have wish to say anything. You don't have to. I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you want to.
No, I'm good. The conversation is fine.
Okay. Okay, then I will call the question. All in favor of giving the development permit for this unit? Okay, and opposed? Okay, it's carried. Okay, so thank you, and we appreciate the architect being there too. We didn't get to see your smiling face, but thank you for coming. All right, we are moving on. We have a proposed notice of motion from me, and that is basically about in response to the delegation that we had before. The motion is there, and just say if there's a, I guess I've moved it, so is there a seconder? This is in response to that. Dirk seconds. Do we need any discussion about this? It's pretty straightforward. Dirk?
I think perhaps it's just a technicality, but both of the be it resolved parts were that the federal government should do something. Shouldn't the be it resolved that the city of Rosslyn asks the federal government to do something?
Yeah, I suppose we can do that. Sure. Sure. With that amendment, is anybody, we can, let's just vote on it with that as amended. Anybody care that we're putting that in? That's like a technical, that's like a clerical thing. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna, any other comments on that? All in favor? Okay, good. Okay, so now we are moving on to zoning amendment 2750, short-term rental zoning removal. That we advance the zoning amendment to remove short-term rentals that have fallen on by the wayside. Who wants to move this? Dirk moves it and a seconder. Stu seconds it. Comments, Dirk?
My only comment actually was that we've lost Andy. I don't know if that matters for this or we need to wait, but yeah, I think this is a good thing to do. Not lose Andy, this motion.
Wait for Andy or go on without him?
I'm happy to wait for Andy.
No, we probably don't need to because we still have quorum and we're going to keep moving. Stuart, do you have anything to add on this one?
No, it all seems pretty straightforward to me. I support it.
Oh. Anybody else comment? I'm hearing children in the background. Okay, I'm going to call the question on this one. All in favor? Okay, yeah, I think it's a great thing too. Now we just have to get rid of the illegal ones. Okay, we're moving on to fees and charges for recreation parks and cultural services bylaw 2751. And we are reading this a second time as amended. Mover. Janice moves, seconder. Dirk seconds. Any discussion? Anybody have any comments? Nope. Okay, and then we're moving. Oh, sorry. Call the question. All in favor? Okay, yeah, Andy isn't back yet. I wonder what happened to him. Okay. Okay, and then that we read the fees and charges bylaw for a third time and take a mover on that, Janice. And somebody put up their hand. Terry, good. No discussion on this because we just talked about it. All in favor? There we go. Okay, 5-year financial plan bylaw 2753. We are reading our financial plan bylaw for the first time. Who's going to move it? This big honking thing. Janice. Why is Janice so quick? Are you guys falling asleep? You know, Dirk is the seconder. Okay, Janice, what's your comments?
I mean, I'm just over the moon about this report, this financial, the financial plan and the financial report. It's just so great that if anyone has any questions about our operation or efficiencies, it's all answered in one document. It's truly a community sustaining document that our CFO has created, and we're lucky to have her. Yeah, and I'm happy with everything she's brought forward.
Yep, great. Dirk.
I like it as well. I think my only comment was some of the optional or optimal versus recommended versus critical. Just squeezing into that are back to our EV discussion that we don't replace vehicles unless we really, really, really have to, unless there's an EV option. I'd rather prolong the life and do a little bit more maintenance than to get something in the gap that's going to take longer to replace.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think that's really important. And Scott, you're there. You think you're good with that, right? Oh, he's quiet. I don't know. Staff, does staff want to speak to that?
Yeah, Scott here.
Okay.
You know, we have to look at all angles of this. There's a cost analysis on maintenance versus newer vehicles and different things like that, and looking at the e-vehicles also. It's not an easy answer if we'll just hang on to it as long as we can until it breaks down halfway, and depends on the vehicle itself. But of course, we're going to look at all aspects before we purchase. We don't just purchase just because it's time. We need to look at all the aspects.
Okay. The staff camera's on. Brian, do you have something to say in there? Hey, welcome back, Andy. We missed you.
No, we're just waiting in case you had any other questions for Alma. You could see that she was here.
Perfect. That's good. We knew she was there. Okay, so any other comments on this? Janice, are you waving or you want to speak? Oh, okay. Okay. Dirk, you want to speak?
Does Elmo wear special shoes for this?
Magic shoes?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's a couple things in here that I think we could make some little motions on after we do first reading here. So when we do first reading, I want to go back and I'll bring up a couple of things for people. I'm just looking at my notes, see if I wanted to talk about anything else. No, I think we're good on that. Okay, so how about we do first reading? All in favor? Okay, great job, Elma, and everybody who helped you do this. I'm just so impressed with how professional the city staff has become over the last few years. And I like the balanced scorecard thing. I think that's really a cool thing that would be, you know, to take that approach of what are we trying to accomplish? Are we doing the right things, and are we doing things right? That's a great way to look at things. So that's super. Okay, so we've done first reading. Now I want to go back because one of the things we talked about with COVID restart funds, there were a couple of suggestions about what we could do with some things that we haven't actually directed staff to look at. And one of them was the fire service review, and one of them was the recreation master plan. Both of those, we got a little bit more detail in that in emails. So Stuart, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to pay less for fire services, but I'd also like to put our money into something where there's a chance of success. So I don't know if fighting another round in that endless fight is actually productive. I'd like to know if, perhaps more of an assessment of the likelihood of actually some possible outcome before we just keep fighting it over and over again.
Well, this is a different angle. This is a different angle that Elma brought up, which was that we look at what the actual cost would be for us if we did decide to go independent. We haven't done that before. The Mitchell report was done in 2013 or wherever, was from the RDKB to look and see what cost savings they could find for the regional service, and they found none. They found great ways to spend more money, but not to save. This would look at we could then look apples to apples, what we get and pay for at the regional level versus what we would get and pay for if we had our own fire service. So it is a little different.
I think it would be be an interesting exercise if we just sort of did sort of an overview and sort of looked at like comparable communities that do it. That would be interesting, just to have more ammunition for Andy when he fights his endless fight down there. But I mean, ultimately the cost is going to depend on devolving the current service, and that's going to be subject to negotiation. So we don't know what we're in for until we get into it. So
that's right, but we don't know until we look at it. I mean, I think right now what I'm kind of looking for is a motion from council to direct staff to look at using some of our COVID restart funds to consider the fire service review and recreation master plan. If we need to make them separate, we can do it. But I just want to know what council's appetite is for giving staff a little direction to do that. Andy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think just to answer on what Stuart was saying is that I think what he said is I'd agree with it. I think the idea is at this point, and I like staff's idea coming forward here, but it doesn't require a $100,000 consultant fee to go out and do this. I think, and it may be something, a conversation with their own staff to do in-house to get some comparable costs, so that I have a little bit more ammunition to talk with some of the other directors in the regional district about the cost of service and what's reasonable and what's not. I think it would really be of value for us to have that kind of numbers. And like I said, it doesn't have to nail down exact figures by any means. It doesn't have to be a big, expensive consultant's report that's required.
I think at this point we need to direct staff to look into it. We can't. I mean, they are fully booked, right? I don't think we can just throw it on them and say, you guys do this, right? We'd have to look at them and say, we're interested in this. What would it take to get that information based on kind of the outline that Elma had sent around? Janice, I think you were next.
Yeah, I kind of agree with, well, I don't just kind of agree, I do agree with Stu and Andy that, I'm not sure that this is something we should throw a whole lot of money at, because then we're just increasing our cost of fire service without increasing any service. But if we could get some general comparables that staff can do themselves as needed, when needed, and maybe some alternatives for additional work that could be done to firm those up, that would be fine. But yeah, I mean, at some point we're just spending a lot of money on studies that aren't, as Stu says, we're not going to have a successful outcome from.
Right. Well, one of the things that Elma pointed out was we may get a higher degree of contentment with paying 38% of our requisition for fire service, right? Because then we realize it's going to cost us even more to do it ourselves. Okay, staff's hand is up. I'd like to hear from them.
Yeah, so we're just, so I think the point on this would be that a couple of years ago, I don't know if all council is aware of it or not, but we had a fire service task force that did a lot of the work in regards to the comparable municipalities, scoping out what would need to get done, kind of high level cost numbers to kind of figure out what the pinch point would be from the city perspective of taking on a service. And regardless of what the transition process is of leaving a service at the regional district, which is another whole conversation to have. But I think what we could do is, from a staff perspective, there is no time internally for us to do this kind of thing. So what we would probably look at doing is revisit some of the numbers, and some of the budget figures that we had presented in last year's budget, I think, where we had a fire service task force or fire service review budgeted for that we never ever spent any money on because it kind of got killed with looking at other more important things during COVID. But now that we're back into this realm of discussion, we can probably, at least put some money in the budget to potentially look at that, knowing that money would be coming from and being withdrawn from the reserve, which is the COVID-19 funding.
Okay, that's good.
So who would
what I'm
actually do the
really
work?
Looking for right now is a motion that council makes to direct staff to do exactly what Brian and Elma are talking about. They'll come back, they're not gonna spend $100,000 without talking to us. They're not gonna spend, anything, but come back with an idea of what we're going to do. Now, hold on, my screen is beeping right around. I think Terry's hand has been up the longest.
Well, yeah, I would support that. And I guess just as a
Good, you can
request,
make the motion then.
okay, I would love staff to resurrect the information that was already done. That's what I'm hearing, and that was my point. Kathy was
Well, we
that
just refer this, we're just gonna have a motion for staff to look into this based on what we've talked about here. We'll let them come back with whether it's gonna go back to that previous report or do something else. Let's give them a little latitude to do
great.
that.
I'd like to make
Okay,
that
do we get a
motion.
seconder? Good. And Stu seconds it. Stu, do you want to comment?
Oh, that all sounds great.
You're good. Good. Okay, now let's see. Chris's hand is up and staff's hand is up. So duke it out.
Just a question, and I thought I should know this, but is there a trigger point in population like policing that a fire service is mandatory?
No, I don't think so. Is there staff? I don't think so.
No, not for this. It's not. It's mostly a level of service. And what we can do is we'll try to we'll circulate to council the old fire task service review, so you guys can see what was done. The intent of the motion that Councilor Miller is going to present is basically going to be allowing us to just insert money in the budget from the COVID Safe Restart Funding bylaw reserve fund to do what we want to maybe look at doing, which would, to answer Councilor Morell's comment, is that we would probably be doing it externally from some type of a emergency management professional consultant company or whatever, take a look what those numbers are and at least get a number in the budget, so then we can kind of talk about what that would look like for an implementation of the program in 2021, or that might be a 2022 thing. But I think it's definitely on top of mind of council to look at that stuff, to again look at that pinch point to see that wouldn't happen anytime soon, but it would be at least a direction, a strategic direction potentially of the city to look at something and plan for something that we might look at doing, which would be a drastic change in how the service is delivered in the area.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think bringing back that report that was done by the task force is a good baseline, because other than Andy and I, nobody was on council at the time when that came out. So that'd be nice to get a refresher on that. Okay, I'm going to call the question on Terry's motion. All in favor? We're good. Okay, now, do we want to also direct staff to look at a recreation master plan? Christy was quite enthusiastic about that and said there was capacity since we could use this money and get some outside help. Stu.
I'm also very enthusiastic.
Okay, Stu makes the motion. Who seconds it? Janice seconds it. Okay, any discussion about this? I think that, we've had so much emphasis on recreation, and I don't think we need to spell it out in detail necessarily unless staff wants more detail, but I think we'd be pretty good to just turn this over. Andy.
What more will be done? What more would be added to the MODIS report that was done previously? As we did spend a substantial amount of money on a recreation.
Well, that was a survey. That wasn't a master plan. That was just
true. So that information, the value of that report, that survey, what beyond that would we be doing with this project?
Okay, I'm going to turn to Christy about that first, and then Stu.
Andy, you can actually look at a variety of master plans that have been done in the area, and some of the ones that I've been going through are actually quite close regionally through some of the regional districts that are nearby, and they're quite intensive. They're more closer to the OCP process, although less, than they are to the MODIS.
Yeah. Stuart.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point. You can look at City of Trail, or a whole bunch of local communities have done pretty detailed stuff, and it's not just consulting the community, it's also then feeding that into a process that then guides policy so that Christy's not just making stuff up as she goes along. Even though she's good at that, be nice to have some policy direction.
Okay, any other comments on this? Again, this is one that we hand back to staff. They come back to us with some ideas about what it's going to look like, what it's going to cost, and then we go from there. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Nobody's opposed. Okay, then the other one I had another one. Oh, okay, so this one goes into COVID restart expense allocations, and we did say somewhere along the line, and I don't know if we're going to want to decide this tonight, we might want to think about this some more, but that we would consider helping out some of the nonprofit groups, but we didn't have a mechanism to do that or how to establish need or eligibility or any of that. There's $32,000 allocated there. Elma made a suggestion we could give each group about 10% more, just a COVID bonus, or she could do a summary of that, or we could talk about some other process. So I wanted to put that out there and see if anyone has an idea about a motion they'd like to make in conjunction with this topic. Stuart.
It just seems this relatively small amount, and the time and effort to actually do, an assessment of needs probably would be chewing up some of the money. So
Yeah.
I'd support whatever the simplest process would be, which maybe the 10% is it.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that is that there's some groups who don't come to us for money, like the food bank, who might be able to really benefit, and they would automatically not be included because they're not part of our regular community grant and aid group. That's the only point I'd make about that. Okay, who else? Comments? Janice.
Well, I would also say that some of our nonprofit societies that come to us haven't had a detrimental effect because of COVID, so they don't need an extra 10%.
Yeah, true. Dirk.
Yeah, I think just that a quick assessment of need is probably reasonable, given that this thing does not seem to be ending. So we may have more legitimate needs next year and not want to give everything away right away.
Yeah, we don't have to give anything away, right? At this point, we can just hang on to it and see what we think about that. I'm just bringing it up because this is a good time to talk about it if we want to talk about it. Any other thoughts on this or a motion on this?
So this process would be ongoing?
Excuse me?
So this will be ongoing, like Elma's going to do a review or make a recommendation. It's coming back to council?
Well, it would, but we haven't made a motion. We could make the motion, just give 10% to all the groups that we already support. We could make a motion saying, let's have Elma do a needs assessment. We could say, no, we want to hang on to it for this year. We could say, we want to give it all to the food bank. We could, we can do whatever we want, right? We're trying, this money we set aside for helping nonprofit groups, we haven't decided what we want to do with it. So that's why I brought it up. And we don't need to decide tonight. If you guys want to think about it some more, we can tell staff we want to talk about this later. Terry and then Janice.
I'm in favor of thinking about this, and I'm not in favor of allocating 10% across the board to our the groups. Doesn't feel right. Okay,
Janice.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've got it in the budget. It's sitting there. I'm in no hurry to, we don't know what, unfortunately, we don't know what the future will bring. Right. And so I also don't, I think we should just sit on it and think on it.
Okay. All right. Well, do you want to make a motion that we do that? Just so
I'll make the motion that we sit and think.
Okay. All right. And Chris seconds it. Okay. Any further comment on that? All in favor, sit and think. Yeah, put off today what we can. No, I actually think that's the right thing to do, but I did want to bring it up because it would be a time to do something with it. Okay, so we are done with the fantastic financial plan. Just awesome. We are now moving. Oh, we've done Iron Cult. We're moving right along here. We've done the Tennis Society. We are at, yeah, we've done that one too. Okay, so we're on page 326, the Safe Restart funding, and this is the local government development approvals program application to get some assistance. And take a mover. I'm not going to call on Janice. She's the one who has the quickest reactions to put her hand up. You boys are slow. Stu, okay, and Dirk seconds it. So this is great. Do we want to discuss it? We just want to vote on it?
Free money.
Okay, okay.
I want to hear what Janice wants to say.
Okay, really, no comments on this? We'll just vote, all in favor? Okay, yeah, that's great. I hope we get it, and that's really good. Okay, so now we're on to age-friendly, and this is that we approved the draft of the agreement, the regional age-friendly services and the Roslyn Community age-friendly services. I think we could probably do it all at once. Mover, Andy, good, he got his hand up, and Chris, good boys. Okay, Andy, you want to comment on age-friendly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important asset to our community to have this position and the services we're providing on behalf of it. I also think that there was a question from the Beaver Valley to potentially partner with us on this as well. So I don't know if Christie's heard.
Yeah, she's all over that. That was
Good.
part of the report.
So and that won't make a change, or we'll still be able to provide the service we need to, even if we do add that to it.
We did actually ask them if they wanted to partner in when we were looking at some other routes for this, where we would, as an entire region, have potentially Heather full-time. And Beaver Valley actually chose not to. They want to, with their committee and their subcommittee over there, they want to retain their own person. So they had talks with Heather separately from us, but they did opt out of this one for us, even though they might hire the same person in the end.
Okay, that's quite recent, obviously.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Because I know that I had that conversation with directors very recently that thought that they wanted to potentially partner. So
I think what they might have been talking about is they were interested. We passed information through staff to get to them about Heather's availability to try to piece this together as an entire region. So I think they were quite excited about the possibility of hiring her on for some hours. And it was going to sort of create this larger regional program a little piecemeal versus us all agreeing as municipalities and having her hired through one of us, like we're doing with Warfield and Trail.
Well, I think there was even chat about possibility of regional service, but we don't need to go there. No, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have comments on this? All in favor? Okay, good. All right, now we have the Roslyn Senior Housing Society demand loan extension for a further 30 days at the request of BC Housing again. Do I have a mover? Terry and Andy. Terry, you have any comments?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yep, I think so. Andy, anything?
All good. Yeah.
All good. Anybody have anything? Okay, all in favor? Nobody opposed. Okay, so here we have RCAC installment requests for chairs, 4 chairs, artistically done. Can I have a mover? Stuart and Chris, any comments? No. Chris, no. Dirk.
I think my only comment was that I don't know if we need to do this as soon. It seems like inviting a whole bunch of people to touch one place right now is maybe not prudent. That was my only concern. I think this is better than Orcas.
Yeah, well, it's not coming till June. There's still some time. Janice?
Yeah, I was just going to say this actually ties in nicely with our idea of creating more open outdoor spaces in town for people to, you know, just have some more space around themselves and have some outdoor areas to sit. So,
yeah, Andy.
Well, this tied into your question too, Kathy, about what our commitment has been to outdoor seating, and we talked about this a year ago about providing more tables and chairs in the community. So it sounds like there's still an initiative to do that beyond these 4 chairs. I'd be interested to hear from staff about that.
Yeah, that's true. Let's get through this motion, and then we get the update on that, because that is a different initiative that uses some money from Tourism Roslyn. So anything else on these particular chairs? All in favor of artistic chairs? Okay. Okay. Good, that passes. Okay, now back to Andy's question about the other chairs and tables that were put up, and I see staff room and Scott both have hands up. You guys decide who's talking first.
Scott can go.
Scott can go. All right, Scott.
Yes,
You're on.
we have a whole bunch of tables and some benches all ready to go. We're just strategically going to be planning to put them up in the next couple of weeks here. So you're going to see additional seating all throughout downtown.
Great, that's super. That's the answer we wanted to hear. Okay, so anybody have anything on the updated task list? Any comments on task lists? Nope, we're all good there. Members reports. I'm going to start with Stu. Stu? Are you there?
I don't have anything to report.
Nothing to report. Okay, Chris. Oh, Chris is missing. No,
No,
Chris
I'm
is
here.
back.
Hold on.
Oh.
Wait, I'm back. Wrong button.
Good.
Very sensitive fingers.
Yes.
March 31st, I had a very exciting day. I had two meetings. I had the Midtown Development meeting, and I'm hoping this week we can get to review some bid reports and have a look at some of the quotes that are coming in. Very excited about that. And then also on the 31st, I had a museum board meeting, and it was a really good discussion on the form and character of the new museum experience. And it's going to be, I just can't wait till that becomes a little bit more prevalent to people. And then they're working on a new walking audio tours for all of the exhibits there. And that was pretty much it.
Okay, good. Thanks. Janice.
All right, I've got on March 9th, 23rd, and 30th, I attended some economic task force meetings. It's a really great group. They're very keen. They've identified a strategy of first determining the state of business in Rosslyn, secondly, identifying the gaps in service to both businesses and the community with a primary goal of retention and growth of our existing businesses. And then third, making recommendations on actions to fill the gaps for future activities by the task force. On March 16th, I attended a CBAL meeting. CBAL works with the Regional Age Friendly Coordinator as well. So they have done a few really cool things. They've done a weekly Zoom activity for live tours from places like New Zealand, hands-on classes like card making. They've got 20 seniors now that are regularly attending the events. In March, 2 of the participants offered to do Zoom baking classes, and that went over really well. So that was cool. They also continue to offer an iPad loaner program for seniors. So if you know seniors that want to get to use an iPad for FaceTime to talk to relatives or do something else, that's available. Also, Strong Start is running really well in Rosslyn. It's full every day. They added a Facebook Live song time and a 1-week baby time. So they're really happy about that. Out of our November meeting, we created some goals. One of them was to create some better availability or better ability to reach the vulnerable people who would need the CBAL services and the coordination of those services. And so one of the things we discussed about was is having the regional recreation providers that are dealing with people who are accessing the Common Access Card, having some documentation that they can hand out or get to those people because they clearly have some need if they're accessing that common card. So Christy, don't be too mad. It shouldn't be too much work. CBAL will put the information together, and then it's just a matter of utilizing people, utilizing facilities that are already dealing with these people to try and get it out so that they're aware of the full scope of programs that are available. March 16th, I presented some growth and economic data to the OCP Steering Committee and the Economic Task Force. The information was well received. I got some good positive feedback and dialogue regarding that. There was some ongoing dialogue, which was really great. March 22nd, I attended the committee of the whole for the CBT funds. March 24th, I went to a hospital board meeting to finalize the 2020 budget and taxation rate. So for 2021, it was agreed the hospital tax rate would reflect a 5.5% reduction to the entire area, which also, but that does allow an increase in reserves of almost $300,000, $282,000 dollars. So the rate for 2021 for hospital taxes will be 0.2218 per thousand. The hospital board also approved to voted to approve long-term borrowing to complete phase 2 of the Kootenay Regional Hospital project. It'll require just over $2 million this year, and the total project value is $15 million. On March 30th, I attended the Fortis 30 by 30 lunch. You were there too, Kathy, I think. And yeah, it was very interesting. Their analysis is that to meet our greenhouse gas emissions goals, we'll need to implement a diversified approach using renewable natural gas and electrification, because we don't have the infrastructure capacity to reach those goals without using both sets of infrastructure. They also had some really interesting data on where most of the greenhouse gases come from. And it'd be nice to get a copy of that just to share around, but I did not. I had to leave for another appointment, so I didn't have a chance to ask for that. And then on April 1st, I attended a review and discussion on retention in local government. It was done by a counselor out of Smithers. She sent out she's doing her, what is she doing? She's doing a practicum in dialogue and civic engagement at SFU. So she got responses from 458 local elected officials, and discussion just revolved around how to retain people so that we have some continuity within our communities, recognizing that new voices are also really great, but also how do we make sure that the people who are enjoying their job and enjoying the role in elected government, that we continue to support them and retain them as long as they want to stay, and there aren't external forces that are keeping them from leaving, and what we could possibly do about that. So I had a busy couple of weeks.
You sure did. Terry.
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow. Thanks. The library is having their board meeting this coming Wednesday, and I think, I'm not sure if everybody knows that a new Stacey Bowden's been hired as the director at the board, so she's going to be running the library down there. The OCP process continues to bump along, and Janice has already talked a lot about that, but the public engagement program is going in full swing, and Stacey's working hard, and as is everybody, and the job jar is going to heat up there with some lively discussion about ongoing in the background about COVID and public engagement, and how we pull that off. So that's interesting. That's all I've got, other than we've already talked about the design review meeting that occurred around the Iron Colt design.
Okay, Andy.
So I don't have a report for this meeting, but we'll have one for the next one. And as Mark Anderson pointed out, it's been a busy month getting the budget struck and approved at the end of March. Yeah, so I'll have a more concise report coming up for the next meeting.
Great, thank you. Dirk.
Yeah, 2 OCP meetings. The first was Janice's highly entertaining and informative talk on taxes. I think it's available to view outside of this as a recording, and it's definitely worth it. Have some wine. It's definitely worth it. OCP, the second one was growth and affordability. That was an interesting conversation, certainly a more engaging breakout group style conversation. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. The Sustainability Commission meeting was good. It's nice to have Matt coming on board. There was another potential member at the meeting, and they are definitely looking for new and sustainable blood. So a call out to people, particularly the Food Task Force, needs some help. And I think that there's some more energy coming into the group. It'd be nice to see it grow and flourish. And on the Sustainability Commission, there is a webinar by Ken Holmes tomorrow night at 7 about right sizing your home heating system. Certainly, as we're talking a lot more about renovations, and it's a perplexing issue, I promise. It's be very interesting to have this conversation, as a lot of us are doing renovations while at home. That's it for me.
Okay, great, thanks. So a bunch of the meetings I've been to were already covered. The MCON, we had a couple of meetings there. We do have a report about the results of that, and it's looking very positive. So we should have that coming to council at our next meeting for a decision, which is very exciting. You'll see in the information packages, I wrote a couple of letters of support. One for the farmers market coupon program, which our farmers market didn't run, but the coupons did, and families in our area took advantage of them and shopped at the trail farmers market. And a letter to Alex Loeb for her 10 years of service at the SC, because she's now stepped down. And a letter of support for the LCIC to get some major funding from CBT for regional economic things. Had a really interesting conversation with Y2Y, which is Yukon to Yellowstone, and that is they're trying to get wildlife corridors through that whole area, and they've been working a lot in the East Kootenay. There's a number of highway crossings, either under the highway and culverts that already exist, that kind of thing. But so there's quite an interesting effort going on there, and the intent, of course, is to move it farther towards the west. And that'll probably come up at the May Highway 3 Mayors and Chairs Coalition, because that was one of the priorities of that group, along with certain road improvements, was also to increase the wildlife corridor safety and pedestrian and bicycle safety whenever they do road projects. Yes, with Janice, I was on the FortisBC call about clean energy pathway to 2050. And that was really interesting. And they did say they were going to send out those slides, and then they could be shared with you, but they haven't sent them out. So that Janice just reminded me that I haven't gotten them either. So we could ask for that, because it's really worth looking at. It's quite interesting. The community communication group, which was Red, Tourism Roslyn, Josie, Chris and I were both on that call, which was the last call of the season, because of course now the ski hill is closed, and everyone was, breathing a sigh of relief that we got off as lightly as we did in our community. But it was kind of scary. Janice's talk was really well received, and I think everyone should see it. I'd like the community to see it, but we have to figure out ways to get bits and pieces of it out to people. I was unable to attend the OCP Advisory Committee Growth and Development session, but I did watch the video afterwards and sent comments in. That's also pretty interesting. I think based on what Andre said tonight, we should just send a letter of support for the MRDT. So I'll make a motion that we send that letter of support. If someone wants to second it, put a hand up. Okay. Any discussion? I don't think so. All in favor, letter of support. Good. Okay, so we'll get that done. I like to have council weigh in on letters of support, but a lot of times when they come, we don't have time before the letter of support is due. So sometimes I just make an executive decision and do it. This goes back a while, but Stacy and I had a really enjoyable virtual session with the RSS grade 6 class. They're studying our community and our OCP. And they had some great questions. I think there's more than one future planner in that classroom, so that'll be fun. I attended a sit at Zoom. They've now rebranded to ETSI-BC, which is Economic Trust of the Southern Interior instead of Southern Interior Development Initiative Trust. Both of them are kind of mouthfuls. The mission appears to be more tightly focused on business and economic development. So in the past, we've gotten, I know Blackjack had gotten money from them. I don't know if the Trail Society did, but it seems like those kind of grants might be harder to get in their new orientation of what they're doing with that group. I attended a RMI Mayor's Roundtable with Dr. Bonnie Henry, Minister Osborne, Minister Marks, that's Ministry of Tourism and Municipalities. The intent of the call was to talk about special circumstances facing the resorts, and that was good. Out of that, there was more communication about that, but now it's like that's such old hat because ski season's over. I'm still doing the weekly IHA mayor's calls about updates on vaccines. Those are Thursday afternoons, And whenever I get the notices, I didn't get one from last week, which is why I didn't share it. And I don't know why. I've got to follow up on that. Maybe because it was Friday was the holiday and Monday was the holiday. But I do have the opportunity to ask questions. So if any of you have questions about, this is particular to IH, if any of you have questions about how the vaccine rollout is going in IH, or you're hearing things from people and you want me to ask a question, just send it to me. I try and get the questions in before Wednesday afternoon for the Thursday call. And then I did a Zoom with a group of, this was Climate Caucus of rural elected people to talk about some of the challenges faced by all of our small rural communities trying to move towards low carbon future. It was mostly just a talking group of the converted. Not much came out of it, but it was all people very enthusiastic. So I attended the Rotary's 100 Who Care event, which was a really cool fundraiser. People put in $100 and they got a vote on the projects. There were 5 finalists. The community garden was the one that won, which is of interest to us because that's on city property. The city had already authorized that they could move the community garden, but they needed money to do it. And it's a good project between the Roslyn Environmental Society as well as the school. The school kids are going to be involved, and it's really cool. And it got overwhelming support, evidently. So I don't know. Janice may have an inside track on how the voting went on that through Rotary, but no. Anyway, it was great. And then here's the other thing. I met with our municipal auditor. They have a nice new policy where they want to just, any of you could talk to them. They just call the mayor. But if anybody has questions on the audit, we will have the auditor present. I think that's our next meeting's delegation. But if anybody has any questions to the auditor, you can contact the auditor directly and they will answer your questions. And this is great because the auditor actually does work for council, but usually it's so intertwined with staff that we're kind of on the side. And it was great because I know in the past when there have been issues with how the city is managed, all of that, it was a little hard to get to the auditor. And now this is their policy that they will reach out to us all the time. Of course, I said, we have no problems now, so it doesn't matter, but it's still a nice thing. And they had nothing but nice things to say about Alma and the financial department and everything that's been done. So I think we're going to get a very nice report from the auditor. And that's it. So with that, we can adjourn this meeting, I think, right? Oh, wait, no, hold on. We have, yeah, we declassified a few things from in camera from before. So those things are all declassified. We don't need to make a motion for that, I don't believe. So now we're going to have a motion to recess to in camera, and I'm not going to read why we're doing it. You guys know it's for A and E. And so here we go. Motion to go to in camera. Janice and Andy, all in favor. We're gone. Thank you for everyone who is leaving, if there's anybody left.